Welcome to my channel. Please like this video and subscribe. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's get started. Brandon Harrow's fingers danced swiftly over the keyboard, streams of code appearing on his screen one after another. The soft glow from his monitor cast a faint light on his face in his dimly lit home office. At 39, he wore the look of a man deeply engaged in his life's passions, his work as a software engineer and his roles as a devoted husband and father. A light tap on the door interrupted his focus, and he turned his chair to see his wife Vanessa leaning against the doorframe. At 35, she carried an effortless elegance, her business suit still sharp despite the late hour. "Hey," she greeted with a weary smile. "Just wanted to let you know I'm heading to bed." "Early flight tomorrow," Brandon nodded, his gaze lingering on her face. "Another conference?" he asked. "Yeah, big pitch in New York. I should be back by Friday." Vanessa glanced at the array of empty coffee mugs cluttering his desk. "Don't stay up too late." "Okay, I won't," Brandon assured her, though his mind was already drifting back to the problem he was working on. Good luck with the pitch. As Vanessa left, Brandon felt a familiar ache in his chest. These brief exchanges, quick kisses goodbye, and passing words in doorways had become all too common in their 12-year marriage. He couldn't quite remember when it began, but at some point their lives had started drifting further apart. He returned to his screen, fingers poised over the keyboard, as the house settled into quiet, broken only by the low hum of electronics and the ticking of a distant clock. This was his space, the calm, the focus, the satisfaction of a job well done. It had driven him to success in Silicon Valley, enabling him to provide the life he had always envisioned for his family. Yet Brandon's eyes wandered to a framed photo on his desk, taken during a vacation to Hawaii 5 years ago. Vanessa was laughing as she built a sandcastle with their daughter, while their son toddled toward the camera with chubby arms reaching out. Brandon's throat tightened. When was the last time they had all laughed like that together? He shook his head, pushing the thought aside, and refocused on his work. "It's just a busy season," he told himself. Once Vanessa's big project was finished, things would slow down. They'd have more time for each other and the kids. Everything would be okay. The next morning, Brandon woke up to an empty bed and a hastily written note on Vanessa's pillow. "Didn't want to wake you. See you Friday. Love. V." He sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. Another week of solo parenting was ahead. As he went through the morning routine of getting the kids ready for school, a feeling of unease settled in his stomach. He watched his 8-year-old daughter Lily carefully pack her backpack, while 5-year-old Max zoomed around the kitchen making spaceship noises. "Dad," Lily said, her brow furrowed as she zipped up her bag. "When's Mom coming home?" Brandon forced a smile. "Friday, sweetheart." "Just like last time," Lily nodded, but her shoulders drooped slightly. "Okay, it's just, she promised to help me with my science project this weekend. I can help you with that," Brandon offered, ruffling her hair. "What's it about?" as Lily excitedly explained photosynthesis. Brandon felt a mix of pride and sadness. His daughter was growing up so quickly, and Vanessa was missing so much of it. He made a mental note to talk to her about reducing her travel when she returned. The week dragged on, filled with work deadlines, school pickups, and bedtime stories. By Friday evening, Brandon found himself pacing the living room, anxiously waiting for the sound of Vanessa's key in the lock. When she finally walked in, wheeling her suitcase behind her, he was struck by how tired she looked. "Hey," he said, stepping forward to take her bag. "How was the trip?" Vanessa gave him a faint smile. "Exhausting, but successful." "We landed the account." "That's great," Brandon replied, searching her face for something, a spark of excitement or a glimpse of the passion that had first drawn him to her. Instead, he saw only fatigue and distraction. "I'm beat," Vanessa said, stifling a yawn. "Mind if I grab a quick shower before dinner?" Brandon nodded, swallowing his disappointment. "Of course, take your time." As she disappeared upstairs, Brandon busied himself with reheating the lasagna he had made. He set the table, poured 2 glasses of wine, and waited. Nearly an hour passed before Vanessa reappeared, her hair damp and tousled. She had changed into sweatpants and one of Brandon's old t-shirts, an outfit that once made his heart skip a beat, but now only emphasized how small and fragile she looked. "Sorry," she murmured, sliding into her chair. "I guess I dozed off." Brandon suppressed the flicker of irritation rising in his chest. "It's fine. You must be exhausted." They ate in silence, the clinking of forks against plates echoing in the quiet kitchen. Brandon cleared his throat. So tell me about the trip. How did the pitch go? Vanessa launched into a detailed account of her presentation, her eyes brightening as she described the client's reaction. Brandon listened, nodding in all the right places, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her enthusiasm seemed forced, almost rehearsed, and then Travis came in with the numbers, and that sealed the deal, Vanessa was saying, a small smile on her lips. Brandon's fork paused midway to his mouth. Travis, is he new on your team? Oh no, Vanessa replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. He's been our sales director for about a year now. I'm sure I've mentioned him before. Had she? Brandon searched his memory but came up blank. He forced a smile. Right, of course. Sounds like you two make a great team. Vanessa's eyes shifted away, focusing on her plate. Yeah, we work well together. The conversation stalled again, an uneasy silence settling between them. Brandon studied his wife, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor, the way she avoided his gaze, the slight tremor in her hand as she reached for her wine glass. It was as though a stranger had replaced the woman he'd known for over a decade. Vanessa, he said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. Is everything okay? She flinched at his touch, pulling her hand back as if burned. What? Yes, of course. I'm just tired, that's all. Brandon's chest tightened, a cold dread creeping in. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? If something's bothering you or if work is too much. I said I'm fine, Brandon. Vanessa snapped, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard. She took a deep breath, visibly calming herself. I'm sorry, it's just been a long week. I think I'm going to turn in early if that's okay. Before Brandon could respond, she was already heading upstairs. He watched her go, a heavy feeling of dread sinking in his stomach. Something was very wrong, and he was determined to find out what. The next morning, Brandon woke early, his mind heavy with worry and doubt. He quietly made his way downstairs, careful not to wake Vanessa or the kids. As he started a pot of coffee, his eyes landed on the laundry basket in the corner of the kitchen. Vanessa's suitcase sat nearby, still unpacked. Without thinking, Brandon found himself sifting through the clothes. He hesitated when his fingers brushed against something silky, Vanessa's favorite blouse, the one she always wore for important meetings. As he lifted it, a faint scent caught his attention, something muskier than her usual perfume. Heart racing, Brandon inspected the blouse more closely. Near the collar, he spotted a small, crusty stain. His stomach churned as the implications hit him hard. No, he thought, shaking his head in denial. There had to be another explanation. Vanessa would never ... But even as he tried to reason it away, Brandon knew deep down what he was seeing. The distance, the late nights, the mysterious Travis, it all fit together horribly in that moment. For a long time, Brandon stood motionless in the kitchen. Holding the stained blouse in his trembling hands, part of Brandon wanted to storm upstairs and confront Vanessa with the evidence of her unfaithfulness. But the logical, methodical side of his mind, the side that made him a skilled software engineer, kept him grounded. He needed solid proof, undeniable evidence. With shaky hands, Brandon neatly folded the blouse and placed it in a plastic bag. He jotted down the address of a discreet testing lab he had once used for a work project and hid the bag in his briefcase. As he heard movement from upstairs, Brandon quickly tidied up the kitchen, his thoughts racing. He dropped the blouse off at the lab on his way to work, knowing that within days he'd have his answer. And then he would decide what to do next. The following days passed in a fog of anxious anticipation. Brandon went through his usual routine work, family dinners, bedtime stories, while the weight of his suspicions bore down on him. He watched Vanessa closely, searching for any sign of guilt or deceit, but if she noticed his scrutiny, she didn't let on. On Tuesday evening, while helping Lily with her homework, Brandon's phone buzzed with an email notification. His heart pounded as he saw the sender discreet testing services. With trembling hands, he opened the message. The results were blunt, clinical, and devastating. The substance on the blouse was indeed semen, and it contained traces of a particularly aggressive strain of syphilis. The room spun around Brandon as the full impact hit him. Vanessa hadn't just been unfaithful, she had potentially put his life in danger. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily's worried voice pierced through the haze of shock and anger. Brandon blinked, forcing his focus back to his daughter's concerned face. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Why don't you finish that last problem on your own? You're doing great." As Lily returned to her notebook, Brandon excused himself and retreated to his home office, closing the door behind him. He leaned against it, struggling to catch his breath, his mind spinning through a torrent of emotions: hurt, betrayal, rage, fear. What now? The question echoed in his mind, demanding an answer. Should he confront Vanessa immediately? Throw her out? File for divorce? Or should he wait, gather more evidence? As the initial shock began to wear off, Brandon's analytical mindset resurfaced. He needed more information before he could make any decisions. More importantly, he needed to shield himself and his children from the consequences of Vanessa's reckless actions. Taking a deep breath, Brandon sat down at his computer and started researching. He looked up symptoms of syphilis, treatment options, and long-term effects. The more he read, the colder his anger became. Vanessa hadn't just violated their marriage vows, she had put his health at risk. As he dug deeper, a plan started to form in Brandon's mind. He wouldn't confront Vanessa, not yet. Instead, he would gather more evidence, uncover the full scope of her deceit, and when he had everything, he would act. The sound of the front door opening jolted Brandon from his thoughts. He quickly closed his browser tabs and stood, smoothing his shirt as he left his office. Vanessa was in the entryway, kicking off her heels. "Hey," she said, giving him a tired smile. "Sorry I'm late." Last-minute call with a client. Brandon watched her closely, looking for any signs of guilt, but all he saw was the same distant, distracted expression she had worn for months. "No problem," he replied, keeping his tone even. "There's leftover lasagna in the fridge if you're hungry." Vanessa nodded, already heading up the stairs. "Thanks, but I think I'll just go to bed. It's been a long day." As she disappeared upstairs, Brandon felt a surge of cold resolve. He would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. And when he did, Vanessa would realize betraying Brandon Hargrove was the biggest mistake of her life. Brandon sat at his desk, the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly as he prepared for what he was about to do. The house was silent. Vanessa had left for another business trip that morning, and the kids were asleep upstairs. He took a deep breath and began typing. Years of working in tech had equipped him with the skills to bypass Vanessa's passwords and access her personal cloud storage. As he navigated through folders and files, his heart raced. Part of him hoped there would be nothing incriminating, that this was all just a horrible mistake. But then he saw it, a folder titled NYC Trip Videos. Brandon's finger hesitated over the mouse. Did he really want to see what was inside? Could he handle it? The image of the stained blouse flashed in his mind, stealing his resolve. He needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. He double-clicked, and the folder opened to reveal a series of video files dated by their recording times. Brandon's hands shook as he clicked on the latest one. The video started playing, and Brandon's world crumbled. There on the screen was Vanessa, his wife of 12 years, and the mother of his children, in a passionate embrace with another man. Brandon recognized him from the photos on Vanessa's work profile: Travis Delaney, the 38-year-old sales director she'd mentioned. "Oh, Travis," Vanessa moaned, her voice filled with a passion Brandon hadn't heard in years. "I've missed you so much." Travis's hands roamed over her body as he pushed her onto the hotel bed. "I can't get enough of you, Vanessa. When are you going to leave that boring husband of yours and be with me?" Vanessa laughed, a sound that cut through Brandon like a knife. "Soon, baby. I promise. I just need a little more time." Brandon slammed his laptop shut, unable to watch anymore. He stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before he vomited. As he heaved, tears mixed with his sobs, confirming what he had feared in the most brutal way possible. When he finally regained some control, Brandon splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection. The man in the mirror was unrecognizable, pale, hollow-eyed, and filled with a coldness he had never seen before. In that moment, something inside him hardened. The pain and shock began to transform into something darker, something colder: rage. He returned to his computer, forcing himself to watch more of the videos. Each one was another knife to his heart, but he catalogued every detail, every betrayal. The videos weren't just from New York. They spanned months, maybe years, covering cities across the country, even in their own home, when Brandon was away on work trips. As dawn broke, Brandon finally stepped away from his computer. His eyes stung from the lack of sleep, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. Over the next few days, Brandon put his plan into motion. He started by distancing himself emotionally from Vanessa. When she returned from her trip, he greeted her with a cold indifference. "Hey," Vanessa said, wheeling her suitcase into the foyer. "How were things while I was gone?" Brandon barely glanced up from his laptop. Fine. Vanessa paused, confusion flickering across her face. "Is everything okay? Why wouldn't it be?" Brandon replied, his tone flat. "I don't know. You just seem." Brandon finally looked up, his eyes hard. "I'm fine, Vanessa. Just busy with work. How was your trip?" "Oh, it was good," productive Vanessa stammered, shifting uneasily. "I'm going to unpack," she said, as she hurried up the stairs. Brandon allowed himself a small, grim smile. Let her wonder, let her feel uneasy. It was exactly what she deserved. Over the following weeks, Brandon continued his icy behavior, speaking to Vanessa only when necessary, avoiding any physical contact, and immersing himself in work and looking after the kids. Preoccupied with her affair and wrapped up in her own guilt, Vanessa initially barely noticed the shift. One evening, as Brandon was tucking the kids into bed, Lily looked up at him with concerned eyes. "Daddy, are you and Mummy fighting?" she asked, her voice small. Brandon's heart sank. He sat down on the edge of her bed, gently smoothing back her hair. "No, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" Lily hesitated, biting her lip. "You don't talk to each other anymore, and Mummy looks sad all the time." Forcing a smile, Brandon replied, "Grown-up relationships can be tricky sometimes, Lily. But I want you to know that no matter what happens between me and Mummy, we both love you and Max very, very much." "Okay," Lily nodded, though she didn't seem fully convinced. As Brandon turned off her light and shut the door, he felt a fresh wave of anger toward Vanessa. How dare she put their children through this? Days turned into weeks, and Brandon's cold demeanor slowly began to affect Vanessa. She became more irritable, increasingly desperate for his attention. One night, while they were cleaning up after dinner, she finally confronted him. "What the hell is going on with you, Brandon?" Vanessa demanded, slamming a plate down on the counter. "You've barely spoken to me in weeks." Brandon turned to face her, his expression blank. "I didn't realize I needed to entertain you, Vanessa. Don't you have work to keep you busy? Or maybe other distractions?" Vanessa's face turned pale. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Nothing," Brandon replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just wondering how you manage to juggle it all: work, family, your extracurricular activities." Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but Brandon cut her off. "Save it, Vanessa." I know. The color drained from her face. "Know what?" Brandon laughed, a harsh, cold sound. "Everything. The affair, the disease. All of it. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Vanessa staggered back, clutching the counter for support. I can explain," she stuttered. Brandon's voice was calm but dangerous. "Explain? Explain how you've been cheating on me for months, maybe years? Explain how you brought a potentially deadly STD into our home, putting not just my health but our children's lives at risk?" "Go ahead, Vanessa. I'm listening." Tears filled Vanessa's eyes. "It's not what you think, Brandon. I was lonely. You were always so distant." "Don't you dare try to put this on me," Brandon snapped. "I've been nothing but faithful to you, supportive of your career, and this is how you repay me." Vanessa's tears flowed freely now. "I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far. Can't we work through this? For the kids?" Brandon's expression hardened. "The kids? Now you're thinking about the kids? Where was that concern when you were endangering their future by sleeping with Travis?" Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. "How did you?" Brandon cut her off again. "I told you, Vanessa, I know everything." Turning away, Brandon couldn't bear to look at her any longer. "I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. I can't stand being near you right now." Vanessa fled the room, sobbing, and Brandon felt a mix of emotions flood over him. Part of him wanted to break down, to scream and rage at the injustice of it all. But the larger part of him, the part that had grown colder and harder with each passing day, felt only a grim sense of satisfaction. This was just the start of Vanessa's reckoning. The next morning, Brandon woke up early and went straight to his home office. He had an important appointment, a video call with Neil Kavanagh, the ruthless divorce lawyer known for leaving spouses with nothing. As Brandon logged into the call, he was met by Neil Kavanagh's sharp, calculating gaze. The lawyer's reputation for being merciless was evident in every line of his face. "Mr. Hargrove," Neil began, his voice clipped and professional. I understand you're seeking a divorce under difficult circumstances. Brandon nodded, his jaw clenched. That's right. My wife has been unfaithful, and worse, she contracted a potentially deadly STD and kept it hidden from me. Neil raised an eyebrow slightly. I see. And I assume you have evidence to back these claims. Brandon nodded firmly. Extensive evidence. Videos, emails, medical test results. I've documented everything. A small, predatory smile appeared on Neil's lips. Excellent. That will give us a significant advantage in court. Now, Mr. Hargrove, what are your objectives for this divorce? Brandon leaned forward, his eyes cold and determined. I want to protect my kids and myself. I want full custody, and I want Vanessa to walk away with nothing. She made her choice when she decided to betray our family. Neil nodded in approval. With the evidence you've gathered, those goals are achievable. However, I must advise you to keep your wife's illness private for now. If it becomes public knowledge before the divorce is finalized, it could complicate things. Understood, Brandon said. What's our next move? Gather more evidence, Neil replied. The more we have, the stronger our case. I also recommend hiring a private investigator to follow your wife during her business trips. It could provide us with valuable leverage. As the call ended, Brandon felt a sense of grim resolve settle over him. He had a plan now, a clear path forward. Vanessa had dug her own grave, and now she was going to lie in it. Over the next few weeks, Brandon dedicated himself to building his case against Vanessa. He hired Evan Lynn, a discreet but thorough private investigator, to track Vanessa during her trips. The reports Evan sent back were damning. Not only was Vanessa continuing her affair with Travis, but they were also using company resources to fund their escapades. One evening, as Brandon reviewed Evan's latest report, his phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Working late tonight? Don't wait up. Brandon's lip curled in disgust. He knew exactly what kind of work Vanessa was doing. He quickly typed a reply, fine. The kids miss you. It was a petty dig, but Brandon didn't care. Let her feel guilty for once. As the weeks passed, Brandon noticed that Vanessa's health was deteriorating. She often complained of fatigue and weakness, and dark circles had begun to form under her eyes. Still, she didn't seek medical help, dismissing her symptoms as stress from work. One morning, as Vanessa rushed out the door for yet another business trip, Brandon couldn't resist making a comment. You're looking a bit pale, Vanessa, he said casually. Maybe you should see a doctor. Vanessa paused, her hand on the doorknob. I'm fine, Brandon. Just tired, if you say so. Brandon shrugged. But you know, some illnesses can be serious if left untreated. Wouldn't want anything bad to happen to you. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. What are you implying? Brandon met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Nothing at all. Just concern for your health. Have a safe trip. Vanessa slammed the door behind her, and Brandon felt a wave of satisfaction. Let her worry. Let her wonder how much he really knew. A few days later, Brandon received a call from Evan Lynn. Mr. Hargrove. Evan's gruff voice came through the line. I've got some interesting information for you. Brandon sat up straighter in his chair. Go on, your wife and Mr. Delaney aren't just using company funds for their little rendezvous, Evan explained. I've uncovered evidence of serious corporate fraud. They've been embezzling money, manipulating expense reports. It's big, Mr. Hargrove. A slow, cold smile spread across Brandon's face. This was exactly what he needed: leverage, not just against Vanessa but Travis as well. Send me everything you've got, Brandon instructed, and keep digging. I want every detail of their operation. As he hung up, Brandon felt a surge of dark triumph. He had them now. All the pieces were coming together. That evening, as Brandon was helping Max with his homework, Vanessa burst through the front door. She looked awful pale, shaky, with a sheen of sweat on her forehead. Mommy, Max cried, running to her. Are you okay? Vanessa forced a smile, but Brandon could see the fear in her eyes. I'm fine, sweetie. Just feeling a little sick. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy needs to talk to Daddy. As Max scampered off, Vanessa turned to Brandon. Brandon raised an eyebrow. I need to talk to you. Vanessa sank onto the couch, her hands shaking. I went to the doctor today, she said quietly. He thinks I may have contracted a serious illness. He wants to do more tests, but... She trailed off, tears welling up in her eyes. Brandon's expression remained emotionless as he watched her, but inside he was boiling with anger, even now faced. With the consequences of her actions, she couldn't bring herself to be honest. A serious illness, Brandon repeated, his tone icy. How could that even happen, Vanessa? You've always been so careful about your health. Vanessa flinched at his words. Brandon, please, she pleaded. I know things have been rough between us lately, but I need you now. I'm scared. For a moment, Brandon considered revealing everything he knew, watching her crumble under the weight of her own lies. But Neil's advice echoed in his mind, keep the illness under wraps until the divorce was finalized. Instead, he stood there, looking at Vanessa with disdain. You should have thought of this before making your choices, Vanessa. I hope for the kids' sake, it's nothing too serious. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. As he walked away, leaving Vanessa sobbing on the couch, Brandon felt a mix of emotions, anger, hurt, and a twisted satisfaction in seeing her suffer, but beneath it all was a deep, aching sadness for what they had lost, for the family that would never be the same again. In his office, Brandon opened his laptop and started drafting an email to Neil Kavanagh. It was time to proceed with the divorce. Vanessa had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences alone. Brandon sat in Neil Kavanagh's office, his fingers nervously drumming on the armrest of his chair. The divorce papers lay on the desk between them, a stark reminder of how quickly his life had unraveled in just a few short months. Neil leaned forward, his sharp gaze fixed on Brandon. Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this, Mr. Hargrove? Once we file these papers, there's no going back. Brandon took a deep breath, steadying himself. I'm sure. Vanessa made her decision. Now it's time she faces the repercussions. Neil nodded, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Very well. With the evidence we have, I'm confident we can secure everything you're asking for: full custody, the house, most of the assets. Vanessa won't know what hit her. Brandon picked up the pen, hesitating briefly as a small voice in his mind questioned if he was truly ready to destroy the mother of his children. But the image of Vanessa with Travis hardened his resolve. Let's do this, Brandon said coldly, signing his name with a flourish. Neil gathered the papers, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Excellent. I'll file these first thing tomorrow. Prepare yourself, Mr. Hargrove. Things are about to get very interesting. As Brandon left the office, a swirl of emotions gripped him: relief, anxiety, and a grim sense of satisfaction. The wheels were in motion, and there was no turning back. When Brandon arrived home, Vanessa was waiting in the living room, her face pale and eyes red from crying. Where have you been? She asked, her voice trembling. Brandon hung up his coat, avoiding her gaze. Vanessa wrung her hands nervously. Brandon, please, we need to talk. I got the test results back. For a moment, Brandon's mask of indifference slipped despite everything. A part of him still cared about Vanessa's well-being. What did the doctor say? He asked, his voice softer than intended. Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. It's not good. The doctor says I have syphilis, a particularly aggressive strain. He wants to start treatment immediately. But she broke down, shoulders shaking in silent sobs. Brandon watched her, torn between the desire to comfort her and the anger that held him back. I see, Brandon said, his voice carefully controlled. And how exactly did you contract syphilis, Vanessa? Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with guilt and fear. I don't know. Maybe from a public restroom. Or Brandon's voice turned cold. Don't lie to me again. I know about Travis, Vanessa. I know everything. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You know, Brandon laughed bitterly. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? The late nights, the business trips, the way you've distanced yourself from me and the kids. I'm not stupid, Vanessa. Vanessa collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Brandon, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Please, can't we work this out for the kids? Brandon felt a surge of anger at her words. Now you care about the kids? Where was that concern when you risked their future by being with Travis? Vanessa cried. I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Brandon. Can't you forgive me? Brandon's expression hardened. Forgive you? For destroying our marriage? For putting my health and our children's future at risk? No, Vanessa, I can't forgive that. He pulled out a thick envelope from his briefcase. These are divorce papers. I've already signed them. You should read them carefully. I'm seeking full custody and most of the assets. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. Divorce? Brandon, no, please, we can fix this. I'll do anything counseling, whatever you want. Brandon shook his head. It's too late. You made your choice when you decided to be with Travis. Now you have to live with the consequences. As he turned to leave, Vanessa called out desperately, Brandon, wait. What about my illness? I need help, I need support. I can't do this alone. Brandon paused at the doorway, not turning around. You should have thought about that before bringing a dangerous STD into our home. Get help from Travis. I'm done. He walked away, leaving Vanessa sobbing on the couch. As he climbed the stairs to check on the kids, Brandon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was done. Now he could focus on protecting his children and rebuilding their lives. In the weeks that followed, the divorce moved quickly. Brandon's evidence, combined with Neil Kavanagh's ruthless tactics, left Vanessa struggling to keep up. She hired her own lawyer, but it was clear from the start that she was fighting a losing battle. One afternoon, as Brandon was reviewing documents in his home office, he received an unexpected call from Lauren Delaney, Travis's wife. Mr. Hargrove. Lauren's voice was tense, barely controlled. We need to talk. Brandon's heart raced. Mrs. Delaney, what can I do for you? There was a brief pause on the line. I received some videos of my husband with your wife. Brandon closed his eyes, feeling a mix of guilt and satisfaction. He had sent the evidence anonymously, knowing it would expose the affair. I see, he said cautiously. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. Lauren's laugh was bitter. Are you? Because from what I hear, you've known about this for quite a while. Brandon sighed. You're right. I knew, and I'm truly sorry I didn't come to you sooner. I was dealing with my own hurt, I understand, Lauren said, her voice softening slightly. But now I just don't know what to do. Travis is begging me not to leave, insisting it was a mistake, but how can I ever trust him again? Brandon felt a surge of empathy for Lauren. She was an innocent party in all of this, just like he was. I can't tell you what to do, Mrs. Delaney, but you deserve better than a man who would betray you like this. A long silence followed. You're right. Thank you, Mr. Hargrove, and I'm sorry for what my husband and your wife have put you through. As the call ended, Brandon leaned back in his chair, feeling a swirl of emotions. He had set these events in motion, and now the fallout was spreading beyond his own family, but he couldn't bring himself to feel remorse. Travis and Vanessa had made their choices, and now they had to deal with the consequences. The next day, Brandon received a frantic call from Vanessa. Brandon, what the hell did you do? She screamed as soon as he answered. Brandon pulled the phone away from his ear, wincing at her volume. What are you talking about? Vanessa, don't play dumb with me. Vanessa's voice was high-pitched with panic. Lauren knows about me and Travis. She's divorcing him and asking for everything, and now Travis is threatening to testify against me in our divorce. Brandon felt a cold satisfaction settle within him. Is that right? Well, it seems your actions are finally catching up with you, Vanessa sobbed. I'm sick, Brandon. I need help, not the destruction of everything I've worked for. You brought this on yourself, Brandon replied, his voice firm. You made your choices, Vanessa, and now you have to live with them. As he hung up, Brandon felt conflicted. Part of him still cared about Vanessa and worried about her health, but the part of him that felt betrayed and hurt found grim satisfaction in her crumbling world. In the following weeks, the divorce progressed quickly, with Travis turning against Vanessa and offering damning testimony about their affair and the corporate fraud they had committed. Vanessa's position deteriorated rapidly. In a last desperate attempt to salvage something, Vanessa appeared at the house one evening. Brandon found her on the doorstep, looking worn and desperate. Please, Brandon, she begged, her voice hoarse. Can we talk? Just give me a chance to explain. Brandon hesitated but eventually stepped aside to let her in. They went to the kitchen, where Vanessa sank into a chair, her hands trembling. I've lost everything, she whispered. My job, my reputation, and now Travis has turned completely against me. With this illness. Brandon, I don't know what to do. I need help. Brandon leaned against the counter, watching her with a mix of pity and lingering anger. What do you want from me, Vanessa? You threw away our marriage and endangered our family. What did you think would happen? Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. But please, Brandon, for the sake of what we once had for our children, can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? To help me? For a moment, Brandon's resolve wavered. The woman before him was a shadow of the vibrant, ambitious person he had married. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be all right. But then he remembered the videos, the lies, the betrayal. His expression hardened. "You dug your own grave, Vanessa," he said coldly. "I'm sorry you're sick and I hope you get the treatment you need, but I can't be the one to help you not anymore." Vanessa's face crumpled. "Brandon, please. I have nowhere else to go. You should have thought of that before you threw away everything we built together," Brandon replied. "I think it's time for you to leave." As he led her to the door, Vanessa turned one last time. "What about the kids? Will you at least let me see them?" Brandon hesitated, conflicted. "We'll work out a visitation schedule through our lawyers, but for now, it's best if you stay away with that." He closed the door, leaving Vanessa alone on the doorstep. As he leaned against the closed door, Brandon felt a mixture of relief, sadness, and lingering anger that he wasn't sure would ever completely fade. In the weeks that followed, the divorce was finalized. True to Neil's promise, Brandon was awarded full custody of the children, the house, and most of the assets. Vanessa, her health declining rapidly, was left with almost nothing. Brandon threw himself into rebuilding his life and caring for his children. He took a leave of absence from work to focus on helping Lily and Max adjust to their new reality. It wasn't easy. There were tears, tantrums, and tough questions, but slowly, day by day, they began to heal. One evening, as Brandon was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, is Mummy ever coming home?" Brandon's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, gently smoothing her hair back. "No, sweetheart. Mummy made some choices that mean she can't live with us anymore, but she still loves you very much." Lily's lip trembled. "But why didn't she love us enough to stay?" Brandon struggled to find the right words. "Sometimes, Lily, grown-ups make big mistakes that hurt the people they love. It doesn't mean they don't love you, it just means they have to deal with the consequences of their actions." Lily nodded, though Brandon could see she didn't fully understand. "Will we ever see her again?" Brandon sighed. "Yes, you'll see her. We're working on a schedule, but for now I need you to be brave and patient." "Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I can be brave, Daddy. I promise." As Brandon turned out the light and closed Lily's door, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. His children were the innocent victims in all of this, and he vowed to do everything he could to protect them and give them the stable, loving home they deserved. Months went by, and Brandon settled into his role as a single father, juggling work and childcare with the help of a nanny. The kids slowly adapted to their new normal, though there were still tough moments and questions about their mother. One afternoon, Brandon received a call from the hospital. Vanessa had been admitted, her condition critical. Despite everything that had happened, Brandon felt a pang of concern. He debated going to see her, unsure if he could face her after everything. In the end, it was Lily who decided for him. "Daddy," she said, her young face serious, "if Mummy is sick, shouldn't we go see her? That's what families do, right?" Brandon looked at his daughter, amazed by her capacity for forgiveness and love. "You're right, sweetheart. That is what families do." They arrived at the hospital to find Vanessa, a shadow of her former self. She was pale, her once vibrant hair now limp and dull. When she saw Brandon and the kids, her eyes filled with tears. "You came," she whispered weakly. Brandon nodded, his expression guarded. "The kids wanted to see you." As Lily and Max hugged their mother, chatting about school and their lives, Brandon watched from a distance, feeling a complex mix of emotions: anger, pity, and lingering sadness for what might have been. When the kids stepped out to get snacks, Vanessa turned to Brandon. "Thank you," she said softly, "for bringing them and for everything. I know I don't deserve your kindness." Brandon ran a hand through his hair. "No, you don't, but they deserve to see their mother. And despite everything, I wouldn't want you to be alone right now." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Brandon, for everything. I know it's too late, but I need you to know that." Brandon nodded, his throat tight. "I know, and I hope you get better, Vanessa, for the kids' sake." As they left the hospital, Brandon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't fully forgiven Vanessa, but he had found a way to move forward, focusing on his children's needs first. In the months that followed, Brandon concentrated on rebuilding his life. He threw himself into his work, earning a promotion that allowed him to provide a better life for his children. He began dating again, cautiously, always prioritizing Lily and Max's well-being. Vanessa's health improved slightly with treatment, though doctors warned she would never fully recover. She had visitation with the kids, first supervised, then gradually more relaxed as she proved herself responsible. One evening, as Brandon sat on the back porch, watching Lily and Max play in the yard, he reflected on the past. Year's journey, the betrayal, the anger, the pain, it had shaped him, changed him in ways he was still discovering. But as he watched his children laugh and play, Brandon felt a sense of peace. They had survived the storm, were healing, and growing stronger every day. While the scars of Vanessa's betrayal would always be there, Brandon knew he and his children would be okay. He had weathered the storm, protected his family, and come out stronger on the other side. As the sun set on another day, Brandon Hargrove looked to the future with hope and determination, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead for himself and for his children.